we didn't plan it this way, but we had Katie at 8, we had Kenny at 9, and we saved the best for last. Matt Barnes joins us. Thanks, buddy. Good morning. How are you?
Good, fellas. I'm good. Just literally finished up my workout, so ready to get the day started.
Man, you are sweating. What were you doing today?
Man, everything, full body.
How I gotta ask, because you're not you're not playing in the NBA anymore, but being healthy is a way of life. So for you, how much are you working out per week, and how long are your workouts usually?
I work out probably 4 times a week, and my about an hour 15, and obviously I do it because some of my suits were getting a little too tight, but I kind of have a knack for kind of eating what I want. So to be what I want and fit in my suits, I got to stay in the gym.
I'm a big fatty, so I got all the equipment at home. I just don't have the motivation. So you're gonna have to text me some tips if I ask you questions, okay?
Gotcha.
There's a lot of Kings stuff we can talk about. They're the number 2 seed in the NBA. That's an awesome thing, and we'll certainly get to that. But Matt, I was thinking about you. I brought you up on the show yesterday because the Ja Morant situation is super concerning, just because he's such a good player. You never want to, and even if he wasn't, you never want to see anybody go through anything like this. And the one thing we've kind of talked about is, no disrespect to me and Jason, but we've never been professional athletes, and we've never had millions of dollars at 23 years old. And we heard from Jalen Rose a couple of days ago talking about it, Kendrick Perkins yesterday. But I thought about you, Matt, because we actually, you and I grew up kind of near each other. I was Rio, you were Del Campo. We were around some of the same things, but also grew up obviously far differently. And you've had a couple of controversies here and there in your career. So I thought maybe it would be cool to ask somebody who's been in these situations what your take is on Ja.
I mean, it's a tough situation. Obviously, I've been had some run-ins and have had some money, but not to the level of stardom and superstardom and hundreds of millions of dollars. This kid is 23 years old with the world at the palm of his hands, and not to make any excuses, but I can only imagine at his age with that much money, you kind of feel like you're invincible from a standpoint. And, everyone's been kind of beating a dead horse, what he should do, what he shouldn't do. He needs to move away from this, and this needs to happen. And I'm not so much of that. I'm to the point of he's made the mistake, or he made a handful of mistakes. He had about a month and a half of just bad decisions after bad decisions, whether it was him or his crew. His name is the one that's going to come to the forefront. So now from my standpoint, how do you fix that? Because, this guy has a $230 million contract that kicks in next year, a signature shoe, a brand new deal with Powerade. This kid has the world at the palm of his hands and has the opportunity to be one of the faces of the league moving forward. So my question now is, you knew you made a mistake. You apologized. I hope the apology was sincere, but how do you move forward from here? Because I think Gilbert Arenas said something the other day, which is where he's going to have to earn that trust, that respect, that rope, so to speak, back, because he's shown that, through his decisions over the last handful of months that, a little immaturity has definitely kicked in the picture. But again, we all make mistakes. I know I just made a mistake in January. You know what I mean? So it's not to judge who he is as a person, but when you're a superstar like that, you kind of have to live by a different set of rules. Like he had a different set of rules than I did. Although I was in the NBA and, I played 15 years, I was never a superstar. I was never a face of the team, a face of a franchise, a signature shoe. So he has to move more carefully than 99% of the NBA.
Matt, that's really interesting because I the other part of this that I got to believe without knowing, without living it and being in his shoes or your shoes, is that with all the money that you said and all the talent and all the ability and all the things, I'm sure he's not going to be short on people giving him advice, but who will he listen to? Like if you got into things in the past, who connected with you that maybe got you redirected, or who was a voice that you would actually listen to that maybe the same kind of thing? Who will Ja actually be listening to?
Well, I was very fortunate, and this is something I talk about on my show all the time. I had vets, like real vets. I had guys that were 36, 37, 38, all the way up to 40, when I was playing and I was doing some of the young, dumb stuff that a lot of young players do. So it was really, my OGs. Chris Webber was someone who, although he had a few run-ins, he was always a voice of reason for me. He was always encouraging. He was always motivating for me. I had a few older guys that no matter what was going on, more than anybody, I would listen to them. So I hope that he possibly has someone like that in his life. But the league is so young now, and again, that's the one thing I preach that, when I came in the league at 21, there were guys that were 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. Now, whether they were being productive on the floor or not, they were always an asset in the locker room. They were always the bridge between the players and the coaches. They were always a voice of reason when you were going through stuff. They helped you through a lot of things. But the NBA has obviously moved away from the older type of players that want to take, chances on all these young guys all the time. So I think there's just a lack of leadership from a real veteran standpoint in every NBA locker room. So, at this point, I'm not really sure who he listens to. Again, I've never been sitting on top. I've never been a top 10 player in the world, a top 15 player in the world. So I'm sure, a little immaturity. I'm sure there's a lot of ego involved. So I hope that he does have someone who was a little bit older, possibly that didn't play, or just an OG in his life, that he will really sit down and listen to. Because I think, initially we heard 2 games. And I thought, although I don't want to see him miss any games, I'm like, he's not going to learn nothing from 2 games. No one learns nothing from 2 games. But then you hear, now it's a police investigation. Now there's an NBA investigation. Now he can miss 50 games. So that's 20 games this season and 30 games next season. So I think now that there's a real possibility of basketball being taken away, and it's not from injury, I hope that that'll be a wake-up call from him. Again, this kid is, one of the most talented guards we've ever seen in this game. Has the opportunity to make so much, not just NBA money, but endorsement money, and really be a face and change his family's trajectory for the rest of his life and his kids' and the lineage of generational wealth. He has the opportunity to obtain right now, but the way he's been moving these last few months, he's jeopardizing all of that. So again, I think now that there's some real consequences sitting in front of him, I hope it's not 50 games, but if it is 50 games, I think this will really be a wake-up call to him. Like, okay, I was moving how I wanted to move. I thought I was invincible, but, I needed to humble myself a little bit and really kind of change up the way I'm moving.
Matt Barnes, former King, current Kings analyst, NBA player, also a phenomenal media member himself, and we'll throw out all the links to that as we continue on the program. Matt, where I really don't want to dip my foot in, because you want to talk about being ignorant to this, is the conversation that seems to be going on, whether it's media members, NBA players, or fans, when it comes to Ja. I read things like, hey, man, you grew up with 2 parents. You're not hood. You're not about that life. And I don't know what to do with that. And again, it's one of the things I really wanted to talk to you about. It seems like there's this internal conversation going on about, is Ja soft? Is he about that life? Is he bringing this on himself? And again, having gone through that career as an NBA player and been in some of those moments in a different situation, what do you make of that conversation?
It's a tough conversation because although, from the outside looking in, you see 2 parents, you see a private school, similar to my situation, you saw my 2 parents and you saw me in Tampa, but what people didn't see were my parents were functioning drug addicts. My dad was in the streets, robbing, doing things, to make ends meet for our family. My parents didn't let me go to the school I wanted to go to. And I say with all due respect, because I'm half Italian, my parents did their darndest to put me in white schools. And I never understood why. Like, why can't I go to school with my neighborhood friends? Why can't I go to school with my basketball friends? And my parents were never going for it. They always put me in a school where they thought I would have the best opportunities to succeed. So it was either going to be Del Campo or Jesuit. And I took a visit to Jesuit and I couldn't do the all boys thing. So we landed on Del Campo. So people see, okay, man, you went to Del Campo, Fair Oaks, 98% white. What is this act? The people used to say it was an act, but, mine was never act. I grew up through tough situations, food stamps, abuse, drugs, fighting a lot. I faced a lot of racism, so I was always fighting at a young age. So mine was never really trying to prove, am I tough? Am I a gangster? I was to prove, my dad said, and excuse my language, if someone calls you, you have my permission to fight them. So at 9 years old, 3rd grade, when I first got to Sacramento from the Bay Area, that's when it kind of started, because I faced a ton of racism. Because again, my parents put me in a lot of white schools. So that was kind of where the chip on my shoulder from and my edge came from, was I just faced a lot of BS. And then Dave, my senior year of high school, my Del Campo was almost burned down by the KKK because I had a sister from a guy that was, racially abusing her and spitting her hair. So my edge, and again, my my fire just came from fighting ignorance. So, that was something that's ingrained in me. So when I came to the NBA, it wasn't really trying to, I'm the toughest guy out there, I'll fight anyone. I was just raised, your family is everything. I was raised, your brother and sister get in a fight, you better get in a fight. I don't care if they win. If you don't get in, you're going to have consequences when you got home. So that kind of carried with me through the NBA. If you look at my, over $500,000 in fines throughout my career, I would say $500,000 was just coming to the defense of my teammates. It was never people messing with me or me trying to go mess with someone else. It was always me, sticking up for Chris Paul, sticking up for Kobe, sticking up for the superstars that I played with. So in Ja's perspective, again, on the outside looking in, things look like he had a pretty normal upbringing, but we never know what he's gone through, as soon as those pictures were snapped, what the dynamic between his mom and dad were. But I think more than anything now with this social media era, everyone wants to prove something, whether it be how much money they have, how many women, cars, houses, jewelry, how tough they are. I think there's always just something to prove for people who really have no outcome on your life. You look at Ja's last incident, and I'll be the last one to tell you don't carry a gun, because as a Black athlete in this country, we are targets. But what I will say is I was taught that you only pull a gun to use it. You don't pull a gun for likes or comments. You pull a gun because you really feel like you need it. So to think that, this guy presses record on himself in a strip club in Denver with no shirt on and shows a gun, I mean, that's just a self-inflicted wound. Now, I don't care if you're a gangster, if you're a square, if you're anything, that's just a dumb move to make, and again, and that was a kind of the culmination of about a month and a half of just bad decisions. So whether he wants to prove who he is or who he's not, or how tough he is, the one thing I think we all agree is he's an absolutely amazing generational talent basketball player. So all that doesn't matter, because again, he's trying to impress people who have no effect or outcome or say on his life. And the old additive, doing it for the gram, like what is the real reason behind doing this? I think we live in a culture now where we see these music videos and artists portraying guns and money and violence, and although we're athletes, we're attracted to that too, because we have some similarities in our upbringing. So I just think we have to draw the line between, the goal of everyone is, if you came from the streets, you came from the hood, is to get out of there, not to stay, or if you didn't come from there, once you get money, to go back. That's never the goal. If you ask someone who really came from it, the goal is to get out and get your family out. And if you do go back, it's to go back and help, but it's not to go back and kick it and show that you're still so-and-so. So again, everyone in the world has been giving this young man advice. I hope that just this situation right now is really kind of waking him up, humbled him, and realized, like, hey, although I think I'm invincible and I have a ton of money, it can all be taken away with, another bad decision.
Matt, thank you for joining us after a workout. Thank you for your insight on things that we just could not have the insight on. And thank you as a Rio grad for not going to Jesuit. That wouldn't have worked.
All right, fellas, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. You. That is Matt Barnes. And we are way late for a break. Listen, I'll say this. Ours isn't to judge yay or nay. Ours is just to simply provide perspectives. And I think Matt's got a very unique, very applicable perspective on all this stuff. We'll take a break. When we come back, news and notes. And Chris Watkins is going to join us right after this.
The Carmichael Dave Show with Jason Ross on Sactown Sports.